You wake up, and before the day has even fully begun, your mind has already opened the same old file. Same worries, same pressure in the chest, same unfinished conversation from yesterday, or 5 years ago, or maybe from some season of life you were supposed to be over by now. And it feels real, doesn't it? Solid, immediate, personal, almost like reality is arriving at your door all on its own. But something deeper is happening. You're not just meeting reality, you're reactivating it. A loop is being powered up the moment your attention lands on it. What feels like life happening is often memory being reanimated over and over until it becomes so familiar it starts wearing the costume of truth. That's the strange part most people never stop to question. You think you're looking at the world, but most of the time you're looking at your conditioned interpretation of it. A recycled map, a mental replay. The mind loves continuity because continuity feels safe, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Pain you know can feel safer than peace you don't. So the mind keeps offering the same images, the same meanings, the same emotional signatures, and you keep confirming them with your attention. Not because you're weak, not because you enjoy suffering, more because the system has learned that repetition equals survival. Once that pattern settles in, the voice in your head stops sounding like a visitor and starts sounding like you. Look closely, and the mechanism becomes hard to ignore. Every problem that seems so heavy in your life has structure because energy keeps feeding it. Attention is not neutral. Attention is creative. What you return to again and again begins to harden, like wet cement under the sun. A passing thought becomes a mood becomes an identity becomes a life. So when you revisit the same fear each morning, you're not just remembering it, you're renewing its lease. You're giving shape to what could have dissolved. In that sense, the loop only survives because it's being watched, believed, revisited, emotionally funded. Like a fire that should have gone out months ago, except someone keeps throwing wood on it and wondering why the room is still full of smoke. Maybe that lands a little hard, but there's freedom hidden inside it. Because if attention built the walls, attention can also stop reinforcing them. Not through force, not through mental violence. Fighting a thought still feeds it. Resisting a fear still gives it a seat at the table. Suppression is just obsession wearing armor. Real release begins somewhere quieter, colder almost. Strategic indifference. A refusal to keep pouring life into what drains life from you. Once you stop staring at the loop, once you stop treating every old signal like a sacred emergency, something starts to loosen. Energy returns, space opens, and for the first time in a long time, you begin to sense that maybe you were never trapped in reality itself. Maybe you were trapped in the act of rehearsing it. Now here's where it gets more serious, because stepping out of the loop is not just a mental shift, it's biological. Your body has been memorizing your past for years. Stress is not only a story in the head, it becomes chemistry in the blood, posture in the shoulders, tension in the gut, urgency in the hands. After enough repetition, the body starts expecting the old emotions the way an addict expects a substance. Fear becomes familiar, frustration becomes routine. Even sadness can start to feel like home if it's been lived in long enough. So the moment you stop feeding the loop, the body notices. Immediately, restlessness rises, random irritation appears out of nowhere, a sudden itch, a need to check your phone, an urge to get up and do literally anything other than sit still. Funny, isn't it? Peace can feel threatening when the system has been trained on chaos. A lot of people misread that moment. They think they're failing. They think silence isn't for them, or meditation isn't working, or maybe they're just too anxious to change. But what's really happening is much more revealing. The old self is panicking because its supply line is being cut. Familiar stress chemicals are no longer arriving on schedule, and the body interprets that as danger. To the nervous system, the known is safety, even miserable safety, even exhausting safety. A cage can feel protective if you've lived in it long enough, so when consciousness tries to step back, when awareness begins loosening its grip on the old program, the body throws a tantrum, not because it's evil, because it's conditioned, because it's scared, because it thinks survival depends on staying exactly the same. Pushing through that threshold changes everything. Once you stop reacting to every internal demand, once you can sit in the fire without immediately reaching for the old identity, a new state begins to open. Brain noise softens. The frantic, jagged quality of survival starts slowing down. A different kind of intelligence comes online, quieter and wider. Not the clever mind that argues and analyzes every little thing, but a more spacious awareness. Ancient traditions pointed to this long before modern language tried explaining it. Be still and know, the old wisdom says. Not be frantic and figure everything out. Not panic until clarity arrives. Be still, because beneath the noise there is a deeper order waiting for you to stop interrupting it. Then comes the part that frightens almost everyone, the void. Once the old emotional chatter fades, once the familiar identity starts slipping, there can be a strange emptiness. No clear reference point, no dramatic problem to hold on to, no usual self to perform. And the ego hates that space. It would rather be miserable and recognizable than free and undefined. So it asks, who am I without this pain? Who am I without this history? Who am I if I stop narrating myself every second? Those questions feel terrifying right before they become liberating, because the truth is, what disappears in that silence was never your essence, only your costume, only the loop, only the voice that kept calling itself your identity. Stay there long enough, and you start to notice something beautiful. When you stop being the storm, you don't become empty, you become sky. Of course, nobody lives with their eyes closed forever. Eventually, the phone lights up, traffic happens, emails arrive, someone says the wrong thing in the wrong tone at the wrong time, and suddenly the old circuitry wants to spark again. So the real work isn't learning how to touch peace for a few minutes in silence. Plenty of people can do that. Real mastery begins when you return to ordinary life without surrendering your center. A quiet room proves very little. Anyone can feel elevated when nothing is pulling on them. The deeper question is whether you can carry that clarity into the grocery store, the conversation, the deadline, the family tension, the random Tuesday afternoon when life feels painfully unspiritual. That's where the teaching becomes real. That's where consciousness either stays awake or goes back to sleep. What helps here is a simple but radical shift. Start seeing the body and personality as an instrument, not your identity. An avatar in a sense. A suit you wear, not the being you are. Once that clicks, even for a moment, you stop getting swallowed so quickly by every reaction. Something rude happens, and instead of becoming anger, you notice anger trying to enter the room. Anxiety comes knocking, and instead of handing it the keys, you observe the sensation like weather passing across a window. That split matters. A tiny gap opens between awareness and reaction, and inside that gap is power. Real power, not domination, not control over other people, just inner non-cooperation with old programs. You stop feeding the script the response it expects, and the world does respond to that, often in ways that feel almost eerie. A conflict softens because you didn't escalate it. A stressful moment passes quicker because you didn't lace it with drama. An old trigger loses strength because you decline the invitation to perform your former self. Life starts behaving differently when you stop showing it the same emotional key every day. People call it energy, frequency, nervous system regulation, spiritual maturity, different names, same core truth. Reality mirrors back the state you consistently embody, not once, not when you're inspired, consistently. That's why a real protocol matters. You have to catch the loop early, feel the contraction, interrupt the pattern, refuse the story, return to space, return to the body without becoming the body, return to the present without dragging the past in behind you like a sack of stones. Mourning matters here more than most people realize. First moments matter. What meets your attention first often steers the rest of your day. Reach for the phone too quickly, and you borrow the world's nervous system before you've even met your own soul. Let stress in before sunrise, and the loop starts spinning before your feet touch the floor. But if you wake slowly, if you claim even a few minutes to remember who is actually here, something different begins. Gratitude before information, presence before performance, breath before demand. That isn't a cute ritual, it's a declaration, a way of saying the old loop does not get first access anymore. From there, the day becomes practice, not perfection. You'll slip sometimes. Everybody does. Yet every moment of noticing is a return. Every refusal to feed the old pattern weakens it. Every act of conscious attention becomes a small rebellion against the prison you once kept rebuilding.